We're live. All right. This is a little bit of a different show than I normally do. And I'm assuming people are most likely going to see this in replay more than live. So I'm going to build this as if it's kind of like a video more so than a live stream. But here's the moral of the story. We've got an interview that happened between Joe Rogan and Donald Trump on the Joe Rogan Experience. And I've been going back and forth on how to really get into it because I hadn't watched the whole thing. It's like 3 hours. So finally got the idea, which is live stream it. 2 hours, 58 minutes, 50 seconds. So I'm going to live stream this. I'm kind of curious to see how the interview goes and if I can give people kind of a place to get the message in a format that makes sense to them, then I say, why not? We'll say fair use. Oh, wow, this thing is fair use. So I'm not just going to broadcast the video for the sake of rebroadcasting the video. You know, Joe Rogan owns the rights to the video in its pure form. I'm doing this to react to Joe Rogan's interview of Donald Trump. So it's more of a reaction to how the interview went than just a redistribution of the interview itself. This is up to 38 million views. I looked at this yesterday. I think it was yesterday, and it was at 27. So this thing is just tearing things up on the internet. I mean, these aren't Mr. Beast numbers, but that's kind of what I use to frame this up. 38 million views in 3 days. That's insane. That's more views than most YouTube channels are going to get in their lifetime, including me. All right. So let me tee this up. And I haven't done there we go. All right. I haven't done one of these in so long that I'm rusty on it. But here we are. Joe Rogan, Donald Trump. I'm going to play this at
the Joe.
And let's see what this interview is.
This is it, folks. We need you to send a donation to help elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz right now because time is running out. We're in the home stretch of this election, and November 5th will be here before we know it. The steps you take today will help determine the kind of country we want to be.
I don't know.
So,
I'm not a contributor.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
They got my vote.
By day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
Before.
All right, we're rolling.
All right.
Good to see you. Here we go. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, I wanted to play this, but we decided we shouldn't play it because if you get copyright strike and we don't want to get the episode, we don't want anybody to have any sort of way to get it down.
Sure.
But it was the episode of you when you're on The View, and I think it was 2015 or 2006, like when you were running for president.
Right.
And you got introduced as our friend Donald Trump.
That's right.
Whoopi Goldberg gives you a big hug and a kiss. Joy Behar gives you a big hug. Barbara Walters gives you a big hug. They all loved you. They were all talking about how you're you might be conservative in your financial positions, but you're very liberal socially. They're talking about you in such a favorable light. The audience was cheering. And then you actually started winning in the polls, and then the machine started working towards you.
Yeah.
But there's probably no one in history that I've ever seen that's been attacked the way you've been attacked and the way they've done it so coordinated and systematically. And you see those same people in the past. Very favorable to you, like Oprah, when you were on Oprah's show. She was encouraging you.
Last week I did one of her last shows. I think maybe Thursday or Friday. That was a big deal being on Oprah's show, the last one. And I was like one of the last shows in that last final week. And I said, boy, we've come a long way since that.
What was it like?
He looks more together and polished. His hair's together, the colors work.
I wanted to do this. The Apprentice was still going very strong. We had 12
seasons. This is a good presentation of that.
We had actually 14 seasons, 12 years. We had a couple.
Well, they canceled The Apprentice when you were running for president, correct?
No, they had Arnold Schwarzenegger do it. I was involved in that, and I had enough of it, and we did great. It was doing great, but they wanted me to stay. They all came to see me. They said, we're going to give you a contract. They wanted to extend my contract. Mark Burnett is a great guy. Then they wanted to extend the contract. Mark said, you're crazy. Don't run. Nobody gives up prime time, they said. It's one of those little things, which is probably true.
Nobody gives up prime time, though, for being president?
For running against 20 some odd people, turned out to be 18 professional people, mostly politicians. They said, who will do this? I mean, it's a long shot. Actually, the heads of NBC came over. All the top people came over to see me try to talk me out of it because they wanted to have me extend. The Apprentice was doing well. So it was 14 seasons. It was 12 years. We had 2 seasons where we had a double, which rarely happens. It was just
not good for. I wouldn't want to comment on something.
What happened is previously, like 3 years, 4 years before that, they did a poll. They had Mitt Romney, and somehow they put me in a poll. And I blew
missed.
everybody away. I blew him away, which
But,
isn't that hard,
yeah,
frankly.
what
But I
kind
blew
of
everybody away. And I said, that's interesting, because I never really gave it that much real thought. I thought about it, but never real thought. But I saw these polls were very good. And so I was thinking about doing it then, but I had a contract with The Apprentice. Plus, I was building 2 big buildings at the time, and I wanted to make sure they got finished up properly. It was one of those things. The kids were just sort of getting involved. They're very capable kids, but they were getting involved early on. So I did that. I got them done. I had some very good successes. And I came on, and then I thought about it for the next one after the Romney disaster. And I ran and I won against Hillary. It was quite an experience, but it was a different life, because you're right, The View. I was on The View many times, and they loved me.
Just the way people would talk. I mean, even if people had criticisms about you, people that didn't like you, there was always feuds and stuff like that. But the reality was, the thing turned on you when they found out you were going to be president. It was very coordinated. And some people are catching on to that now. There's a lot of people that were longtime Democrats, like Elon and Bill Ackman, and all these different, very intelligent people.
And they support me. Now, Bill Ackman supports me. He's very supportive.
Yeah. This is what I wanted to ask you.
Some
what
people
was it like when you actually got in? Because nobody really can prepare you for that. When you're running for president, you don't really know what it's going to be like when you actually get into office. What was the? What did you think it was going to be like?
In office, or when I decided
Nobody
to
thought he was
run?
going to
When I
win.
was in, so when I was in and won and was in the White House, essentially. Well, first of all, it was very surreal.
One of the
It's
biggest
very interesting. When I got shot, it wasn't surreal. That should have been surreal. When I was laying on the ground, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew exactly where I was hit. They were saying you were hit all over the place because there was so much blood from the ear. You would know that better than anyone. When they get the ear torn up, bleed. Anyway, so and I was thinking the other day, when that happened, I really knew where I was. I knew exactly what happened. I said I wasn't hit anywhere. With the presidency, it was a very surreal experience. Okay.
Like, what's day one like? You win. You get inaugurated. Holy shit, I'm the president.
Yeah, that's what happened. So I'm driving down Pennsylvania Avenue. I just built a building on Pennsylvania, the hotel, the old post office. It was. We called it Trump National Hotel. And we sold it to the Waldorf Astoria. And it was a wonderful thing. But I'm driving down. I'm passing the hotel. You've never seen so many motorcycles, police, military. You know, it was a major thing. I got off really the first time I used Air Force One, landed, and we're coming down, and it was very beautiful. I mean, it was incredible. And we're going down Pennsylvania Avenue in the opposite direction. You know, normally you're used to going one way, and all of a sudden you're going the other way. The street was loaded up, and I wanted to go out, and I wanted to wave to everybody, but that wasn't smart. You know, it gets a little bit dangerous, right? I mean, when you watch like Kennedy and some others, right? But I really felt, I don't know, the love was so crazy. And so I did get out of the car for a brief, just for a very short walk. I thought it was very important to do. And Melania got out with a beautiful dress on that became sort of a staple. It was, people loved it. And Barron, and we're walking down the street. But where it really got amazing, we get to the White House, and now it's a little bit,
Day one, he's walking down the street.
And we went up to the president's quarters. They call them the presidential quarters. And I'm standing in this beautiful hallway. It's funny, nobody ever talks about the White House as being beautiful inside. You know, you think everything's going to be all metal doors and stuff. It's not.
Tricky.
It's so beautiful. I made my money largely on luxury.
I think Trump
the
can
hallway
be a
is
little
like
bit
25 feet wide. The ceiling heights are, it's so beautiful. But I was standing there, and I said to the guys, I want to see the Lincoln bedroom. I hadn't seen the Lincoln bedroom. I'd heard about the Lincoln bedroom.
Not by
and
any
I was standing with my wife. I said, do you believe this is the Lincoln bedroom? I mean, it was like, it was amazing, because it's, look, if you love the country, but here, the Lincoln bedroom, and the bed, you know, he was very tall. He was 6'6", which then would be like Barron.
Right.
Would be like Barron Trump. He's 6'9", but 6'6". He was very tall. Then on top of that, he wore that. Yeah, there it is. It's a long bed, elongated bed, and because people were shorter than you see some of the chairs are very low to the ground actually. But he had the long bed, and they had you had the Gettysburg Address right under that. You can see it here, right there, the original version of the Gettysburg Address.
I heard that.
And this is the original, and I'm looking at it, just looking around. I said, do you believe this? Because
6'9". Wow.
Even if you were a politician, but I was never a politician. I sort of just started, right? And all of a sudden I'm standing in the White House, and it was very surreal. That room was so beautiful to me, much more beautiful than it actually is to me when I looked at the bed. And the bed was a little bit longer, had to be a little bit longer. He lost his son, and the two of them suffered from melancholia. They didn't call it depression. They called it melancholia, and they suffered from it. He was a very depressed guy, and she was a very depressed woman, more so than him. And on top of that, they lost their son, whose name was Ted. And it was just seeing it in a little picture, a little tiny picture. I mean, you can't see the details there. Little tiny, everything the way it was, a little tiny picture of Ted, who he lost, and it was devastating. And he was in a war. He was having a hard time because he couldn't beat Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee won like 13 battles in a row, and he was getting like a phobia, like a fighter. You know, not about the fight stuff, but like, I went to a UFC fight, and it was a champion who was 14-1 about a year ago. You would know the names. 14-1, and the only guy he lost to was this one guy. But the guy that he was fighting was like almost just an average fighter. He lost numerous times, but he beat this one guy. So I said, okay,
I really don't know who you're talking about.
I will figure it out.
Okay.
But about a year ago. But the point is that he wasn't nearly the fighter. But the one who was not nearly the fighter had beaten. He's the only guy that beat
this
the
is
champ
starting
like 5 years
slowly.
before. And I said, I'll take the guy that won the other fight. And that's what happened. I beat him second time.
Sometimes
Lincoln, what is this crazy thing?
The Lincoln bedroom, and now wrestling.
I never read this. I heard it from people in the White House who really understand what was going on with the whole life of the White House. But Lincoln had the yips about it, in a way, as the golfers would say. He had a phobia about Robert E. Lee. He said, I can't beat Robert, because Robert E. Lee won many battles in a row. He was just beating the hell out of him. You know, they tried to get Robert E. Lee to be on the North, but he said, no, I have to be with my state. You know, the state was his whole thing. And he went to the South. And he was, I've had generals tell me, we have some great generals, the real generals, not the ones you see on television, the ones that beat ISIS with me. We defeated ISIS in record time. It was supposed to take years, and we did it in a matter of weeks. These are great generals. These are tough guys. These are not woke guys. But their favorite general, in terms of genius, was Robert E. Lee. He took
strategy,
strategically. He took a war that should have been over in a few days, and it was, years of hell. A vicious war. And so here I am standing there. And again, I had never really done this before. I ran a number of months before.
See, already this is different.
I guess if you
Trump
max it out,
all
it would
of his
be
other
a year,
interviews
something like that. So I
pretty
never run for
much
office. And I did well. I mean, I went into debates with 18 people, including me, and then slowly but surely they started to
He's
disagree.
not really going
what I want to get to is like, what was the experience once you got inside? Like, what did you think it was going to be like in terms of like your ability to govern?
Yeah.
Like, this is your first experience governing anything. You've never been a governor, you've never been a mayor.
Private stuff.
But now all of a sudden you're inside the White House.
The biggest thing was just that first moment of being in this hallowed, it was really hallowed place to me. It was surreal. To me, that was the experience. It was a surreal experience. And then with time, that wears off. With time, it becomes your place where you stay. And I was doing a lot of, I had two things that I really focused on: governing the country and survival. Because from the moment I won, before I got to office, all of a sudden, they came down. I mean, nobody has ever been treated that way. And you see that. I mean, you see where in the Washington Post very early on, they said, well, now the impeachment stuff starts. And it did. It literally started from the beginning. So I had survival and run the nation. I had a combination. Most people don't have the survival they get in.
Okay, I've got to get through. We're live streaming, so I'm going to be skipping through commercials here.
What did you expect, though, in terms of, like, once you got inside, you had to appoint all these people?
Yeah.
Like, how many appointments did you have to make?
Well, you have actually 10,000 appointments. Now, they're different. You have big ones, and then they appoint 100 people,
10,000
people.
appointments?
But the president really is involved with approximately 10,000 appointments. So you'll appoint a secretary of state, and he or she will appoint a lot of people. So it's but in terms of major ones, you probably have like 100, but they're big ones. Treasury, state, military.
And how did you know who to appoint?
Well, I didn't. I had no experience. Yeah, right. So I was there 17 times in Washington, and I never stayed over. According to the press, which I think is probably right. Over the years, I was only there 17 times. I never stayed over. So now I'm sitting there, I'm saying, this place is gorgeous, but I don't know anybody. It's like you go to certain areas, and other areas, they may be great. Washington was great. Washington's not so great right now. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna make it better. A very dangerous place, very badly maintained place. We're gonna make it great. We're gonna make it better. We're gonna bring it back. But I wasn't a Washington guy. I was a New York guy. I was a New York builder, and I built buildings in New York, and I knew that whole world, but I didn't know the Washington world too well. And all of a sudden, you're supposed to be appointing top people. So
what did you think it was going to be like? First, did you have any ideas what it was going to be like, and what was it?
Well, I was always involved in politics, but usually from the standpoint of a donor.
Right. You don't really
give money to politicians. I enjoyed
mostly Democrats.
Just visually, it's kind of weird.
Actually, Ronald Reagan.
You were a Democrat until like what year?
I was a Democrat. I could give you the exact, but the early 90s. The early 90s. I switched over eventually. Actually, they had a reform party. I was thinking about doing that for a little while, but then fortunately I didn't, because it's very hard to do party system. And anytime you hear third party, I know you like RFK, and so do I. He's fantastic.
I do, but I thought that being an independent was nonsense.
It doesn't work because even if you do great, you're not going to get Congress. In other words, you need now to say, okay, now I'll get half of Congress, and they're going to vote for you. So even if you got there, which is very hard, and I know how you feel about Bobby, and I feel the same way, and he's now with us, but it doesn't. It's pure and simple. It's a two-party system.
Right.
And somebody, I won't mention his name, but somebody spent $250 million trying to get the nomination as a reform party candidate or whatever, and they got just nowhere. You just get eaten. The system eats you alive.
Right.
So it was really somebody that not only was new to Washington, but was new to politics. So in the office of the presidency, over the years, all those presidents, you've had 92% were politicians and 8% were generals. General Eisenhower, General Washington, right? General George Washington, you had generals. So it's 8% no admirals, 8% generals, and 92% politicians. They're politicians, and they go on. So they never had a business guy, or they never had a guy that wasn't elected to an office. They were all like Ronald Reagan. He was a movie actor, and then he became the governor of California for, I think, 2 terms, and then he ran. So you never had a thing like this. But I, in terms of me, and sometimes I use it as an excuse, and I don't like having excuses actually, but I use it as an excuse. I had to rely on people that I respected or liked, but that I didn't know that well, because I didn't know them that well. Some of those people I campaigned against, because when you have 18 people, we had mostly politicians running in the election, running in primaries, and they got knocked out one by one. But I got to like some of them. Some of them I didn't like at all. And I don't like them now. And I'd rely on them, and I'd rely on other people. So all of a sudden, people would come in. I'd like to recommend so and so to be Secretary of State.
So Trump got in office.
One thing I can tell you, everybody wants to be. Of course, no, but sometimes I hear a lot of people don't want to work with Trump because Trump is tough to work with.
You didn't really know.
Everybody wants to be any one of these positions. They die for it.
Of course.
Now they don't want to be known. I mean, there's a particular guy in New York, primarily, very big, very successful, very strong, very political, although he's not a politician. He'd give anything to be Secretary of State, but if they ask him, no, I don't think I would do it. But in the meantime, begging for it. Okay, begging. Everybody wants it.
By
the way, no matter what you do, but it's very dangerous to pick somebody outside of a politician, because a politician's been basically vetted for years.
Right.
You pick a business guy, and they've never been vetted at all, and they're the head of a big company or something, but they've never been vetted. You know nothing about his personal life. You know nothing about where he's been. When you put him in, it's a little bit dangerous, because all of a sudden they get checked up, and you hear things that you say, wow, this is not going to work out too well. So it's very dangerous. Picking people that are outside of politics is somewhat dangerous.
So you're kind of stuck in a position where you have to pick established people. And then the problem with established people is established people are already indoctrinated into the system.
And they're stiffs in many cases. They're survivors. I find that,
What do you mean by stiffs? When you say stiffs?
They don't have nothing. They have nothing. Or they're smart and survive. One little thing. So there was a congressman years before I ran, and I was very close to him. And I needed a license on something, and he was very important in getting the license. But it was a little bit controversial, the license, this particular thing that was being licensed. But I was close to this guy and helped him and everything else. And I went to him, I said, I'd like to have your help. And he said, let me take a look at it. I said, oh, that's not too good, but I really hope you can help. Anyway, he tapped me along for a long period of time and ultimately didn't do it. And I said, you are a stiff. You could have done this thing so easy, etc. But it was controversial. He was in Congress for many years, like 28 years. And there's a reason when somebody's there for 28 years, you got to be sort of smart.
Right.
You have old scandals. And I realized he was a survivor.
And so they never do anything controversial. They never take any chances to speak their opinion. It's outside of the...
Yeah. And yet I don't disrespect him for it.
So
I actually respected the guy more than witness. Because you know what? He's been there like 28 years. And he made it through. A lot of people don't make it through.
It's a good way for non-exceptional people to survive.
Well, it is. I mean, it certainly is.
So you're in there. You have 10,000 appointments you have to make. So you're getting advice from people. And at one point, did you have a moment in time where you realized these are bad choices? Like some of these people I shouldn't have had in there.
Oh yeah, I think so. The one question that you'll ask me, that people seem to ask, and I always come up with the same answer. The one mistake, because I had a lot of success, great economy, great everything was great. The military, we rebuilt it, biggest tax cuts, and all this. What was one of the presidency? 3 Supreme Court justices. Most people get none. You pick them young. This way they're there for 50 years, right? So even if a president is there for 8 years, oftentimes they never have a chance. I had 3. It was sort of the luck of the draw. But I will say that it always comes back to the same answer. The biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
neocons?
Yeah, neocons, or bad people, or just loyal people, or
people that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
people bad advice.
Yeah, I mean, you're reading about him a little bit today. A guy like Kelly, who's a bully, but a weak person. You know more about bullies than anybody probably around, because you deal in a certain sport where the bullies are exposed very quickly.
Yeah.
But He's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me because I go in with a guy like a John Bolton. You know John Bolton. A friend of mine called me up. I was picking Bolton. He's a very smart guy. His name's Phil Ruffin. He's a very rich guy from Las Vegas. He's a great card player. He doesn't play cards, but he's a great card. He's just a natural poker sense, right? Good old poker sense. And Phil Ruffin is a very, very wise kind of a guy and one of the richest people around and has got great success and understands people. So it was in that I was picking Bolton, or I picked Bolton. He called up. He said, "Don't pick him. Why? He's a bad guy." Now he wasn't in politics. He was in various businesses.
Heard this clip.
He said
this gets
he's a bad guy. He's just it always works out bad.
Highlights of the
internet. I said, "Oh man, I wish you told me this 2 weeks. I already hired him. He's here." And he was right, but he was good in a certain way. He's a nut job. And every time I had to deal with a country, when they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh man, Trump's going to go to war with us." He was with Bush when they went stupidly into the Middle East. They should have never done it. I used to say it as a civilian. So I always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
I can definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe.
That's another
shit, and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular. And they boosted the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit, pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. One of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. Like you get out, you do these huge events, and you're just talking. And you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times. We did this Biden impression where he's walking around, doesn't know what he's doing. It's stand up. It's funny stuff. But it's like you, and you're making fun of Elon one time. You're doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have like comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary,
this
you'd be in jail.
Funny because Joe Rogan,
but it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as politicians. Like no one had done that. And I think
you need at least the attitude of a comedian when you're doing this business. This is a very dangerous business. First of all, it's a very tough business.
It's the most dangerous business.
Well, for a job?
Yes. I mean, other than going to war and being a firefighter or being a cop, it's the most dangerous.
It's the most dangerous. Being president is the most dangerous.
Especially you. I mean, you haven't even got to the election. There's been 2 assassination attempts. And they've brushed those out of the news like it was nothing.
Yeah, they'd rather not talk about them.
Imagine if there was assassination attempts on Biden, how hard people would be attacking the right. How they would be trying to get guns taken away from people. They would try to ramp up gun laws. They would try to figure out some way to blame you. If there was attacks on, if Biden got shot in the ear, we would have never heard the end of it.
But I think he's in good shape because it's only consequential presidents. If you take a look at what's happened, look, I'm for having countries pay us billions and billions and trillions even dollars. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. Nobody took in 10 cents, not one other president. I do things that make it, that don't necessarily make me so popular. I just do what's right. And when you do that, you're more, look at Iran. We never had the attack on Israel at all. Iran was broke. I told China, if you buy, you can't do business in the United States under any circumstance. We're going to go cold turkey with China. Some people think that would have been a good idea anyway. But if you buy any oil, 1 barrel of oil from them, you're not doing business. I said that to many countries. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money. But I make myself, I understand what I'm doing. You make yourself a target. And it's a very dangerous business. But if you just look at statistically, so I said, I don't know if it's right, but 1/10 of 1% for a race car driver. That's pretty dangerous business, right?
Yeah.
1/10 of 1% for a bull rider. I tell you, to me, these guys that ride the bulls is worse than UFC. It's worse. Yeah. These guys, you see these big monster bulls, and you see it in slow motion where the foot is like, an inch away from the head if it hits them. The guy's gone, but they die. They die.
So 1/10 of 1% die. What you're saying?
Yeah, 1/10 of 1% die.
Right.
And they certainly get hurt badly. Really, they can't walk after a certain period of time. But with the president, if you look at
the assassination
and attempts too. And attempts. No, it's a very dangerous position. I never thought of that, by the way, when I did it. You don't tend to.
I just assume because people love you on The Apprentice. They love you as president.
Several presidents
probably would have been if the media didn't attack you the way they did. If they didn't conflate you with Hitler. I mean, even today, like Kamala was talking about you and Hitler. They're going to take what you said about Robert E. Lee. Oh, Donald Trump was the South one. Yeah, they love to take things out of context and distort things.
Well, they don't even have to take them up entirely. Okay, but it's interesting when you mentioned I was very popular, and all those people love me. I mean, some of these women, they're so stupid. And Joy, she would every time she'd see me, like I'd be in the theater or something. She'd, you have to be on the show again. Come on, let's go.
She loved you.
They love me.
That episode. By the way, people should watch that episode just to see what we're talking about. Like I said, we don't want to get copyright strikes, so we're not going to put it up. But if you watch the episode, it's bananas. It's like an alternative universe, and it's only 9 years ago.
Whoopi
loved you. Gives you a hug and kiss.
And how about that other one, the new one on there, the one from my administration? She writes me a letter. You're the greatest president. She leaves. She worked as like an assistant press secretary. I hardly knew her, but she leaves and she writes me this gorgeous letter. What's her name? She was I don't even know. Anyway, she was in the administration. She's on now currently. Sits on the far right hand side, whatever the hell her name is. And she writes a letter, the most beautiful letter. She's quoted in the paper. He's a consequential. He was the greatest president. Blah blah blah. Then all of a sudden she goes in the View. She starts hitting the hell out of me because they won't hire her unless. I've had many people go on CNN and they call and say, I don't know what to do. They want to pay me a lot, but I have to be negative. And I said, be negative. That's okay. There are guys on like CNN. They won't hire them. Sean Duffy is a congressman, and he retired. He got a good job with CNN, but he was only positive about Trump. So they kept him, but they would never put him on. I mean, I respect what he did. He could have gone, negative. I tell people, go negative. Let my friends make money. Well, it's so crooked. The press is so crooked.
It's crooked, but it's also they're diminishing themselves. They're killing all their credibility, and it's opening up the credibility to new media. It's opening up the credibility to independent media. All these
the worst I've ever seen, though, and I've seen the worst. I mean, I've been a part of it. I've seen the worst. Kamala goes on 60 Minutes, gave an answer that a child wouldn't give. It was so bad. And 60 Minutes took the answer out. They took the whole, and they put another answer in.
They edited it,
which didn't make sense either, but it was better. They took it wasn't editing. It was fraud. This was not editing. Editing is where I'll give an answer and they'll take a couple of words and change around, or they might even take a sentence or two off, which is very bad. But it's sort of bad. I give an answer which was a very good answer.
About 60 Minutes.
I like to give long weave.
You like to weave things in.
But when you do the weaves,
I don't know if that's true.
When you do the weave, look at this. Just in this one thing, we're talking about little pieces over here, but it always
comes
back home for the wrong people. Back over there in the wilderness.
About Trump.
They can take, and they may take a little piece of it, and they use the term. Yes, we want to say
retraction because some of the things
I think it's the biggest scandal in broadcast history. What happened to CNN? CBS 60 Minutes. It's a news program. It's not an entertainment program. It's under their news. It's the head of their news. She gives an answer that shows that she's essentially incompetent. And they took the answer. Could you imagine them doing that?
We can show it if you want people to see it. Can we show it? No, we get in trouble. We'll get copyright strike. Okay.
I'll
Listen, anyone can find
indemnify
it, but it's drastic. But what was interesting was the other full version was available initially. It was like a preview.
Somebody made a big mistake.
Somebody put that preview out
Some
there.
kid put the preview
exactly.
out, and then the bosses did this or that, and then all of a sudden they said, we got a problem.
Exactly. And then
they got caught by mistake.
Well,
don't you think that's a bit, to me, and don't forget, this is election interference and fraud. And it's 60 Minutes. It's their news division. So they give those licenses out for free. They should pay a fortune. They're worth a fortune. They give them out for free because they're using the public airwaves. With cable, you don't have that. Cable's different. But, you know, it's just a different deal. But with the networks, they give those licenses. They're worth billions of dollars. They give them out free, but you have to be honest and all. That was bad. I think that David Muir and that woman that was aside, I never even heard of her, but they kept interrupting me. It was like, I said, how many people am I debating here? I got this one and I got you two. But he went after me 11 different times. You know, it's interesting. I always thought he was a nice guy, but he's just like the rest of them, you know?
Well, that's his job, unfortunately. And I'm sure what they want. You're right. Well, the problem was they fact checked you and they didn't fact check her. And one of the most egregious examples of that was when she said that there are no troops right now deployed in war zones. Yeah. There's a very famous viral video that went online of troops in a war zone saying, well, what the fuck are we then? Because there's thousands of them. Dan Crenshaw, the congressman, posted on his Instagram all of the various examples of troops that are deployed, thousands and thousands of troops that are deployed. But the point is, if this is going to be an actual real debate and not a propaganda exercise, it's going to be a real debate. You have to fact check everybody. So if someone says maybe she thought there was no, which is also a problem. So it's one of two things. It's either it was not true, it was a lie on purpose, which is terrible, or it was the opposite. It was ignorance, which is also terrible.
Well, Joe, when I said crime is soaring, he said, no, crime has gone down. I said, where did you hear that one? Crime has gone down. I mean, I'm debating with this guy, but I've had that.
Well, there were some amended FBI statistics that came out after that showed the crime had gone up substantially.
And by the way, the statistics were a fraud because when they put out the statistics, they didn't include some of the worst places. They didn't include some of the worst cities, some of the most deadly places. But when the real numbers came out, I turned out to be right. But
you turned out to be right, but then there's another problem. Unreported crime is way up because people have lost the morale that the police department has in a lot of these cities where they've done this defund the police bullshit. The morale of these poor cops, it's fucking horrible. Yeah. It's the dumbest idea of all time. But what they've done is they've made these cops feel terrible. They're like good cops. I think cops are just like everybody else. Most of them are great. It's like everybody else. But if you run into one carpenter and he does a shitty job in your house, you say carpenters fucking suck, but they don't suck. Most of them are great. And that's what you do with cops. But the point is like they did all of these things in this very foolish way, and these cops are suffering the consequences of it. And so subsequently, what happens is a lot of crime is unreported. A lot of crime, like call cops, they're too busy. They can't even get to your house. Sorry, you know, he doesn't even make a report. There's a lot of people that they just give up.
It's so sad what's happened. And I'll tell you what, I go to police funerals, and we went to one in Long Island. I visited the family in Long Island. Very big deal. It's so dangerous. People don't realize the car, dark windows, pull over. He's a gentleman. Please pull over. Door opens. Guy comes out firing. Even if they were allowed to pull out the gun, which they're not, they can't, pull
do
it
in time. Yeah.
They still wouldn't have time.
It's every cop's worst nightmare.
They opened a door, and he was killed, and his partner was hurt. He was killed, and you don't even have an eighth of a second to think. And it is such a dangerous job. That in particular, think of it. You go up to a car, you don't know who's sitting there with a gun, and if they have a gun, you really don't have a chance. You're not allowed to have your gun out. By the way, you have to have very strict rules. So number one, but even if you could have your gun out, the door opens and the bullets start firing out. And especially where they have the dark windows, where they have the dark windows, it is such a dangerous profession, and it's very hard to get cops now because they're not given any backup. And you're right. They have like an eighth of a second to make a decision that's going to change their life. If they make the wrong decision, they're going to end up on the front page of every newspaper in the country, and they're going to lose their house and their pension and their job, and their wife is going to be gone, and everything's going to be gone.
And there's another thing people talk about. How many of them have PTSD? Probably most of them. These guys are seeing people shot all the time. You know, I've talked to a ton of cops about it, and a lot of cops commit suicide. A lot of cops are even depressed.
We have to give them back dignity. We just have to give them back. You said it's so good. You never hear anybody say that. You're never going to have it perfect. You're going to have a bad apple. But every time there's a bad apple, that gets massive publicity, and it taints everybody else.
But it's also this very irresponsible thing where people say defund the police, get rid of the police. Even Kamala Harris was part of that. It's a very stupid way to look at it. What you should do is fund the police. You should have better training. You should have cops that feel more appreciated. You should have something that helps mitigate this PTSD that all of them suffer through.
She was a big part of defund the police. It was a big thing for defund the police. Always defund the police.
Well, it's a political idea.
But anybody with that political thought, I don't think should be running for president. And I think people are getting wise to it. We're doing pretty well now. I don't know. Maybe in a week from now, say, sorry about that, I was wrong, but we're leading everything. And I think we're going to have a very good election. But I tell people, because people are starting to get to know her. But she was defund the police. She was all these transgender operations. If you wanted a sex change and you were in detention and you demanded a sex change, they would give you a sex change.
Well, the wildest one is this idea of giving free sex change to illegal immigrants.
That's right. In detention.
That is the wildest thing. Is that the biggest problem you have? You just walked here for Guatemala, you need to become a girl?
But she was in favor of it. Yes. So think of it. She changed. She changed 15 policies. In fact, I'm going to send her a MAGA cap.
She stole your idea about no tax for tips.
I came up with this idea that honestly nobody ever heard of. It took her 2 months, but you know what? All of a sudden,
it caught fire.
And she just put it into a little speech. I think we still have that issue. I think that issue is a good one for it. But we have a lot of good issues. We had the other day. Think of how simple some of these things are. We're trying to get cars built in the United States. Detroit has been really tough. It's been a disaster. They have a huge factory, huge car plant built by China in Mexico. Make cars, sell them in the United States, put everybody out of business. Here we go again. I said, if that plant is there when I'm president, I will put 100 or 200% tariffs on every car. They'll be unsaleable in the United States. And they just announced they're not going to build the plant because they think I'm going to win. Think of it. They're not going to build the plant. This is the biggest plant in the world. It would have more than all of Michigan makes. That's how big this is. What we're getting to. And I said, if that plan goes up, I want them to understand if I win, I'm going to tax those cars at the rate of 100 or 200% apiece, so that you won't be able to sell them in the United States. They just announced they're not going to build the plant.
Yeah,
I did a big favor for our country by doing that. And I'm not even there yet. To me, the most beautiful word, I've said this for the last couple of weeks, in the dictionary today, and is the word tariff. It's more beautiful than love. It's more beautiful than anything. It's the most beautiful word. This country can become rich with the proper use of tariffs.
Did you just float out the idea of getting rid of income taxes and replacing with tariffs?
Well, okay.
Are we serious about that?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Because our country was the richest relatively in the 1880s and 1890s. A president who was assassinated. He was the tariff king. He spoke beautifully of tariffs. His language was really beautiful. We will not allow
I think
the enemy to come in and take our jobs and take our factories and take our workers and take our families unless they pay a big price. And the big price is tariffs. And he spoke like that, but he was right. And then around in the early 1990s, they switched over stupidly to income tax. And you know why? Because countries were putting a lot of pressure on America. We don't want to pay taxes. They control our politicians. If you look at the kind of numbers that these guys make, then and now, we had a commission meeting in the I think it was 1887. Think of this problem. We were so rich. We had so much money. We didn't know what to do. So
he
they
was
set up a
able to
blue
get
ribbon
Trump to
commission on
start
tariffs.
to go into at
And the
least a
sole purpose
little
is
bit
what
of
to do with all the money we
detail
had. We were so
around his
rich
plan
because we were
for the
taxing other
economy.
people for coming in and taking our
I
jobs.
didn't
And China does it. That's what China did. If you want to open a factory and sell
before. I didn't
cars,
really
you don't build a factory
understand
or have a
Trump's
factory. They don't take our
plans,
cars. They
but
don't take our cars. But if you
it
build
just sounded
a plant
like
in China,
hot air.
you can do that. Elon did that. By the way, Elon is great. That guy is such a great guy. I think you're a fan of Elon.
But
He
then he
is from a
started
different
to
planet. He's the
explain
greatest guy.
things.
That rocket coming in.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
told
you've
the story once
got
or
a
twice.
plan.
So you may have heard
I
it.
do
He just happened. Did you see the one last night?
Yeah.
29,000 people. That was
It
and the
seems
one the night before was the same thing.
because I don't know
We
that
were rocking and
you
rolling.
get
But
everything
Elon,
approved
I'm
that
talking to
you
this very
need
important
to.
guy. I said, wait a minute. I'm looking at
And he
something on
needs a
television.
lot
Something
of
new.
dominoes
And I see this
all
rocket. It's
falling
all
into place.
around from the heat. Trips
Uh-huh.
But I
10,000
did
degrees
hear
pouring
the
down at
plan,
thousands of
and
miles an
that
hour.
was
And I see this thing. It's like a 20-story building.
And it catches
And I say to this guy's an important guy. Wait a minute. Let me just put you down. Hold it. I got to see this. And I see this, and it's going to crash. I say, it's going to crash into the gantry. They call it a gantry. I said, oh, man, that's going to be a disaster because it's starting to get very close. And then all of a sudden, you see the flames in the bottom, and then boom, and then you see the two arms grab it.
Crazy.
And I forgot the guy. I had him on the phone. I forgot. No, I said, I called Elon. I said, was that you? He said, that was me. And I said, who else can do that? He said, nobody. Russia can't do it. The United States, nobody can do it. I set up Space Force. That was me. And that's the first time in 82 years that we opened another branch since the Air Force. And that's going to be one of our most important things. But think of what Elon does. And he did one other thing that I never heard of it. It's Starlink. I went down to North Carolina, Georgia, the different places. Right, I followed it right down. And they had no communication. The poles were all knocked down. And one of the guys in North Carolina said, could you do me a favor? Do you know Elon Musk? Yes. He endorsed me. By the way, he gave me the nicest endorsement too. The tough. He said the country's going to fail. You should do the same thing, Joe. Because you cannot be voting for Kamala. Kamala, you're not a Kamala person. I know you. I've watched you. I know him better than he is. You know what? Without speaking to you, I think I know you maybe almost as well as your wife. I have watched you for so many years. You're not a Kamala person. You're a Khabib person, but you're not a Kamala person.
Interest
They don't know who Khabib is.
getting us
He was not bad, right? That guy.
He was
He
phenomenal.
doesn't.
But isn't back to tariffs. But wait, one second before we finish with tariffs. So they said, could you get him? We need Starlink. And I call Elon. He got it for him so fast, saved so many lives. And I said, how was it? They said, better than the wires.
The notion that we're just going to suddenly.
I used it recently. You got some mountains.
Did you find it good?
No,
It's phenomenal.
It's the size of an iPad. You just set it down on the ground. You get high-speed internet. It's incredible.
We're spending $1 trillion to get cables all over the country, right? Up to upstate areas. We have like 2 farms, and they're spending millions of dollars.
Well, talk about the $42 billion that was wasted on this internet access program. They didn't get anybody. They haven't hooked up one person. Not one person. They spent $42 billion. They could have gotten Starlinks to everybody with that kind of money.
For a monthly charge.
That would have been incredible. High-speed internet everywhere you want to go.
He wanted to do that. How about this? They built the charging stations in the Midwest. They built 8 of them. It was $9 billion. That's like a gas pump, right? They built 9 gas pumps, except electricity.
I guess you got to really
spent
start
$9 billion.
with
3 of them don't work.
because you
The
need
whole
to
thing. There's so much waste. I can sit here and tell you about things that there's so much waste, abuse, and fraud.
Oh, there's.
But
yeah,
I don't
I'm
see
sure.
how this.
I mean, I think everybody's aware of
Let's
that.
get back to tariffs.
When you're talking about one of the criticisms of your administration was with tax cuts and with tariffs, you increased the deficit. So what was the strategy behind that? And did you think it was going to increase the deficit by a substantial amount?
Okay, we were ready to rock. It was all. I had a bad system. We had a horrible tax policy. I made it great with a much lower tax rate. So I took it from almost 40% down to 21%. Now I'm bringing it from 21 down to 15. But only if you make the product in the United States, which is great. People call
don't
this
have
great idea. Nobody ever heard of that
40%.
before. I don't care if they make the product in Japan. Why should I give them? So it's at 21. That at 21. In the first year, we took in much more revenue than we did at almost 40. Think of that. It inspired. Now we had other things too. We were able to get people to bring back their money. You couldn't bring back your money if you had money in Europe, like Apple. Apple had many billions of dollars outside. They couldn't bring it. There was no way to bring it back in. The bureaucracy, the documents, the whole thing, and also the tax was too high. They wanted like half of it or something. Nobody's going to do that. So they leave their money in Japan and they spend their money there. That was part of what I did. The money came pouring back in. Apple took in hundreds of billions of dollars. They brought it back from overseas. They brought it in.
So how does the deficit increase?
So what happened is this: we were ready to rock and roll, and then we had the COVID thing, and we had to focus on that. And if we didn't give some businesses a hand, you would have had a depression like in 1929. But we were ready to start. We would have very shortly been paying off debt. We have $35 trillion in debt. And I'll never forget it. It was talking about from the standpoint of being in office. I'm in the Oval Office, and I have John McLaughlin and Fabrizio, the 2 very good pollsters, probably, I don't know, I would say the 2 best, who knows, but very good pollsters. And we're starting to think about running for a second term. And we had the greatest economy in history. Never has there been an economy.
And you attribute that to lowering taxes and tariffs?
2 things. And also I cut regulations more than anybody else. And if I asked many of the businessmen, from the big companies, the guys running the big companies, I'd say,
so
Rogan interviews a lot more. What's more important to you, the tax cuts, you paid less tax, or the regulation cuts? Every one of them said the regulation cuts meant more. Who would think that, right? Because you don't equate it to dollars, but it actually is more dollars. We had it going, and then we just had to focus on something else. But they were sitting there, these two pollsters were sitting there. And they said, Trump would have if George Washington came back and Abraham Lincoln was his VP, as opposed to Waltz, how bad is he, by the way? But if Abraham Lincoln was his VP, they couldn't beat you. I'll never forget it. The following day, they said, something's happening in China, sir. Could we meet? I said, what's happening?
He wants to get
People are dying. And it was all around the Wuhan lab, by the way. There are pictures with little lines, the body bags, all around
potential
Wuhan.
voters.
I said that from the beginning, Joe. They tried to say, first they said it was France, and they blamed everybody. But then they said it was bats from a cave 2,000 miles away. So we got hit with that. And despite that, we had the best economy. And when I gave it over, the stock market was higher than it was pre-COVID. I mean, nobody could even believe it. But we saved it. And we were helping businesses. They were dying. So
it's your belief that if you had a second term, given the policies in place, the way the economy was booming, that you would have been able to pay off a lot of the debt. And
if we didn't have COVID, we would have been paying off debt, and we would have had, and don't forget, by growth, the word growth is actually more important because you could have the same debt, but if you double your growth, all of a sudden you're under leveraged. But still, we should pay off debt. If you view this $35 trillion right now.
I mean, I do agree with
the asset value. If you look at it purely as an asset value, we have oil underground, we have water, we have mountains, we have. I mean, the assets are so
economy
enormous.
took
But regardless
a
of
hit
that,
because of
the 35 trillion in
COVID.
debt, we should pay it off, and we would have started paying off debt, and probably even given further
would
tax
he have
reductions. I want to get it down to 15%.
accelerated
We're going to do more business, but when you get hit with COVID, everything stops, and you have to keep these businesses alive. The businesses would die.
That's tough.
I mean, they were just
Like,
dying.
you
This whole
don't
place, this
know
country was
what
going to
you
die.
don't know.
Are there influences outside of environmental
make
that keep
claim.
people from wanting to drill for oil and frack and do those sort of things outside of the environmental concerns,
From
which
what
are
I've
legitimate?
seen,
Of course.
No,
Are there other influences
Trump
that maybe
kept
over
us
accentuate or
on
over
the
exaggerate these
trajectory
environmental
of
effects?
what
Are people being influenced in a way
Obama
where they're trying to keep us from
and
producing American
COVID
oil?
threw things
Yeah.
So
out of whack.
the environmental is the biggest tool for stopping
Biden
growth.
just
The
kept
other
us
is
on
regulation.
that same
And
trajectory
if you speak to
that
Elon, he said
Obama
the
had
regulation now to
started
send a rocket
us
up to anywhere, even if you do everything,
on.
it's becoming impossible.
Like, I don't
But they
really
use
say Trump
environmental
or
in order to get
Biden
people
did
not to do
better
anything.
for the economy.
And sometimes
It's
they say,
just-
I look at some of the, I know the environmental stuff better because I had to build buildings in New York. I had to do environmental impact studies. And I would see
Just
some of these
they
guys
were
that hired for a lot of money,
different
environmentalists that would get you through the
places
process.
along
And they'd be up in Albany, that's the capital of New York, and they'd be up there trying to make it tougher
trend
for guys
line.
like me that were builders because they get paid more money. In other words, I had one guy, highly recommended, I was good at getting permits. I was one of the kings of, I was always very good, but the environmental stuff was always horrible. They could slow a project down 10 years, 15 years. I had a project in Louisiana, built big LNG plant. It was for 14 years. It was going to cost $18 billion, one of the biggest, like the Empire State Building, laying down on its side times 4, massive, on the coast, on the Gulf Coast. And they said, sir, they're going to give it up. I said, they shouldn't give it up. What's the problem? They can't get their environmental. They had environmental permits that would fill this whole room up to the ceiling. And they said there was one mistake on one little line. They wanted to do it all over again. It's not going to happen. And I got them their permit instantly. And they built the plant. It's massive.
So when you're saying that, so there's people that are making money by making it difficult.
Yeah,
Are you talking about lawyers?
No,
Because they're
I'm talking
dragging
about
out
environmental
the process?
consultants and lawyers.
Environmental consultants profit off of dragging out the process.
Absolutely.
And how do they
make the
profit?
process work.
How do they
And
profit
I'd
off
probably do the same thing if I were them, to be honest with you.
As
And I
a
want to be honest with you.
How do they do that? How do they make it?
They
how
go,
do
let's say New York, they go to Albany,
Okay.
and they convince people that if you have a certain type of plant on the ground that's this big and in theory valueless, that it's a rare plant, and you cannot ever even touch it. You can't go near it. You can't put a building on it. You can't do anything. Or there's a little puddle, and they call it a lake, and you have to go by the standards of a lake. I said, no, that's a puddle. Oh, you have no idea. Guys are filling little puddles. You have no idea what they do.
And so,
but they use it as a way to stop you.
they use it as a way to stop you and also as a way to generate money. I'm curious how are they generating money that way, though?
Well, they get fees,
They get fees.
massive fees. You
And
pay these guys
people rely on them as experts because they're the people that they go to when they have to run these studies in the first
But
place.
some of them are just bad guys, and they're trying to make it more and more difficult.
And they have a lot of power.
You cannot stand for God and God not stand for you. One of my teammates turned towards me and says, hey, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm not going to kneel and I'm not going to wear the t-shirt.
Do you still
Yeah, I think they maybe had more. They didn't have as much with me because I would get through them, and I understood it. Look, I've done so many. They call it environmental impact study. I did so much to build a building. To build a building in New York is very tough. You got to deal with. Think of it: financing, unions, all the municipal stuff, environmental. Of all of it, to me, the toughest thing was the environmental, because they could stop you cold with the environmental impact study stuff. And you hire a so-called expert. They say, sir, he's the one guy he can get you through the morass. It's a morass. It's horrible. They use it as a weapon. They use it all over the country.
Right, but there are legitimate concerns about environmental impact, correct? Like look at the BP oil spill. There's a lot of things that do happen that are environmentally devastating, and you want to mitigate that as much as possible.
You do. Look, I had, during our 4 years, we had the cleanest air and the cleanest water. I view it differently. I say air and water. Remember this. It costs much more to do things environmentally clean. China doesn't do anything.
Right.
When Kerry goes to see President Xi of China, which he probably doesn't even get to see him, but they look at, oh, yes, we will do. Oh, yes, we're going to do that. No more coal, no more coal. And then they build 58 coal plants for the next year. They build a coal plant a week.
They build a lot of coal plants.
But let me just tell you, though, so here we are cleaning and scrubbing everything. Everything's got in the air's got to be good. But in 3.8 days, that stuff floating over China is right over the top of us. Same thing with the oceans. They dump their garbage into the Pacific Ocean.
Crazy numbers.
If you take a little cork and put it there, in about a week and a half, it'll be in front of Los Angeles.
Mine would have been.
We're picking up their garbage. So nobody ever talks about that. But in a way, the bigger one is even the air. It's an amazing thing. It's been flowing that way for a million years. Long before
the whole world. Yeah.
No,
I'm not going to get
Sahara dust clouds over here.
Absolutely.
We get dust clouds in Austin from the Sahara Desert.
But we get the China, they call it the China curse. We get the China curse. They're better.
How do you think you're doing
when I went there,
election
I had a great relationship with President Xi. We got along very well.
Why?
And they treated me better than anybody's ever been treated. Same thing with Saudi Arabia.
How are you going to get the economy on track?
And I said, this air is good. Do you know they closed every factory 1 week before I got there from within 200 miles?
That's like what Gavin Newsom did when Xi Jinping came to San Francisco.
He cleaned it up. He got rid of all the terrible. He cleaned it up, and then it became a pigsty.
Well, the dumbest thing is he said when your friends come by, when you have visitors, you clean up your house.
Those are the three
Can you imagine?
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say ever as a governor as to excuse to why you finally cleaned up your homeless problem.
And the day he left, it went right back.
Yeah.
But in a way, that was a bad thing that he did because he showed what a disgrace that was.
Well, this is the thing that like shows you how foolish a lot of these people that run these states think. A lot of these people that run these states think it's foolish. Like you're insulting the intelligence of the people that live in that city that are impacted by these people just camping and needles and human feces. There's an app that you can buy. There's an app that you can get rather that will show you where the human feces has been documented in San Francisco. It's a poo app, and it's just everywhere. It's just bum crap everywhere.
But let me give you one that you may not know, which I think you know everything actually as a student of yours. but water, in Los Angeles, you can't get proper amounts of water,
right?
And it's unbelievably expensive. And you might have a house in Beverly Hills, and they're actually thinking about rationing water. Can you believe it?
I can believe it.
And I was in the farm court country with some of the congressmen. We're driving up the highway, and I say, how come all this land is so barren? It's farmland, and it looked terrible. It was just brown and bad. I said, but there's always that little corner that's so green and beautiful.
Part of what
we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought.
I don't know how anybody can
the water
say
isn't
that
allowed to flow
this
down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect the tiny little fish, the water up north. It's routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. You got to see this. We're driving up, and I had never seen it before. It's the most, it's like Iowa. It's the most fertile land. Iowa's blessed with great land. Idaho for potato, right? They're just, by the way, some land is good for potatoes, some land is good for corn. It's the craziest thing. I love the farmers. They're great. They're the greatest. And by the way, they're getting killed right now. They're getting killed because of the stupid administration. But so I see this, and I said, you got to be kidding.
I just don't know.
You mean you have water?
I mean, I also can't
it's like the valve in your sink, except it's massive. The thing's 5 times taller than the ceiling.
Did you know the center of California was a giant lake?
Because of the number.
Did you ever see what it looks like before they rerouted it? The center of California, was it 200 years ago? How long ago did they do that, Jim? The center of California had a fucking enormous lake in the middle of California.
Who
knows what they did? But whatever foolishness that they did led to the situation they're in now.
Think of those dry forests that burned down all. They had a history of something else.
Tulare Lake or Tachi Lake. It's a freshwater lake in the southern San Joaquin Valley, United States. Historically, Tulare Lake was one of the largest freshwater lakes west of the Mississippi. Show photo what it looked like back then.
Because it's Trump.
That's a great system.
So that's what it looked like. Look at that image. Another one. Go to the one in the third from the right.
Yeah.
So that was an enormous lake in the middle of California. Imagine
that'd be much more valuable.
How crazy is that? How crazy is that? That's what it looked like. And human beings screwed that.
No, they let it go into the Pacific, and then they.
I don't know what they did. What did they do? How did it go?
He is getting more.
1983. Oh my God.
More awareness.
Oh, went dry a handful of times. Well, lakes do go dry, but that's a big one.
But think of it. You could have.
But what's he saying was going to
all of that land would have more water. The whole thing could be like that little patch.
Yeah.
Literally, I'd say I was with Devin Nunes as a congressman and other congressmen. We were going up. I was visiting that because they asked me to go up and visit their territory, and I did. But I kept saying, "Look at this land. It's beautiful, but it's so dry." And I thought they were going through like a desert, like a drought. They said, "No, we have water, but it gets dry." So I looked into it. And I got it done. I could have water for all of that land, water for your forest. Your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah,
okay?
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You could have everything. Not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forest because you're not allowed to touch it. When a tree falls down, after 18 months, it becomes very dry. It's like, like real firewood is bad. A tree that's up, these are all things I learned the hard way, the easy way. But when a tree is up, it sucks water. It's wet. I went to they had a couple of horrible forest fires in California. And I said, you have a lot of trees standing. I said, well, healthy trees here. I said, with this intense heat, you can see they would charge a little bit on the bottom, but they're going to be all right because they're soaking wet because they suck up the water, right? But when they fall, they're like, it's like lighting a match.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to clean it. They call maintain your forest. So I was with the head of Austria. He said, it's a shame. I see all those forest fires in California, and all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of leaves that are sitting there for 5 years, and
we'll certainly get rid of the deadfall
and get rid of the trees that are falling. Or like. So many things this country. By the way,
could you rake the whole forest though? I don't think you could rake the whole forest. I think get rid of the deadfall, but raking all the leaves.
You could certainly get rid of the dead. Okay,
that's the real issue.
Environmentally, they don't want to do that. They said, it's got to be nature and all this stuff. But in the meantime, this is exactly.
This is like weird environmental.
It was the Department of Commerce that needed the approvals, but Gavin Newsom had to sign them. I got it all done. Nobody could believe it. It was all done. I said, I got it. You got so much water. All you have to do is sign. And that guy didn't want to sign.
Did he not want to sign because that would be a political victory for you?
I think no, he didn't. No, I don't think so. He used to say he's a great president, and we got along. We did. We actually got along at that point. But I think somebody said you just can't continue to call him a great president. They do say that. But we had it all done. He didn't sign, and then we got onto other things. And every time I go to California, I said, "You have so much water." They don't know it. I'm telling you, people living in Beverly Hills, they turn off the water. Same thing with the electric. They want to go to all electric cars, but they have brownouts every weekend.
Well, right after they made the announcement that as of 2035, you're not going to be able to buy an internal combustion engine in California. Like within a month, they had some announcement asking people to not charge their Teslas. The grid couldn't handle it. Well,
I will terminate the mandate. That will be done. I would say in my first day, maybe 2 days, because
Let me ask you about nuclear. One of the things that when I've talked to people that have a real understanding of nuclear power, what their position is, it's probably the cleanest, safest form of electricity that we can generate, and that the fears of nuclear power are really about a few disasters: the Fukushima, 3 Mile Island. These are old systems, and they're much more capable now, and they're capable of making even better systems. But it's a difficult political issue because you think nuclear power, you think Chernobyl. That's what everybody does. They have this connection that has the potential disaster.
Fukushima. Well, you're not supposed to enter the land for 3,000 years or something.
I think it's worse than that. I think that area is like going to be radioactive for probably longer than you can imagine. But the point is they're better at it now, and that they can do it now, and you can generate power in a way that you don't have to worry about these. One of the most ridiculous things is electric cars being powered by coal-fired plants. It's a ridiculous thing.
So what's happening?
Yeah, it is what's happening. And people want to think they're being green, but it's
well. You look at the way the battery's made. But here's the other thing: we don't have. Well, we do actually. It's being held. We have certain areas where we have great raw earth material, and we're not allowed to use it because of the environment.
That's a complicated issue.
We have incredible raw earth, and they're not allowing. And I'm going to open it up. I'm not allowed to use it.
But how do you do that? China, how do you do that and protect the environment?
Because the environment's going to be protected. You can make a lake out of it. Okay, we'll put back a lake. Something nice about lakes. You can do things magnificently.
You just have to do it carefully.
Absolutely, have to do it. But the problem, China has all of those areas, most of those areas. And yet, when they say go electric with the cars, China's going to be the one that gives us the cars. All of those guys in Detroit are going to be out of business. You're going to make your electric cars over there. We have a thing called gasoline, and we have more oil and gas under our feet than any other nation. I had in Alaska, there's a find. It's called Anwar. I got it approved. Reagan couldn't get it. Nobody could get it. I got it all done. It was amazing. They were getting ready to start drilling. The equivalent, they think, of Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest finds in the world. It was all set to go. And Biden comes in. One of his first orders were, we're not going to use it. It would have been so good for we could have supplied all of Asia with oil and gas.
What was the negative?
And you talk about money.
Right.
The negative was politically, they didn't think it was good for them. That's all.
That's all it was. So you don't think that it's environmentally dangerous?
Taking it from way down deep in the earth, environmentally would have been fine.
So it can be done responsibly.
Absolutely. Well, I think windmills. Okay, so they talk about windmills. I think windmills are really disruptive. When you talk about the environment, they kill the birds. You want to see a bird cemetery? Go under a windmill someday that hasn't been cleaned out with all the bird carcasses. It's like massive amounts of
they're
birds.
also a massive eyesore. I went to a ranch in South Texas. We had to drive past this enormous windmill farm. It's gross. It's dystopian. You're looking on the left and the right. All you see is these big spinning machines that aren't even that effective at generating electricity.
Correct. Most expensive form of electricity is a windmill. And then they start to rust and rot.
And
then they get abandoned by the people that built them.
Well, you have to get rid of all that material too. When you replace those blades, now you have a problem because you have to dispose. Right. You have to dispose these enormous windmills. And how do they
say you can't bury them? So I even question that, but I'm not going to get into it. But they say you can't bury them. So you have the blades, and you can't bury the blades. You can bury the blades. It's not going to matter. You'll find areas you can bury. But they come up. This is what I mean. They come up with this. But the environmentalist dream is windmills. You know what happens to them? After 5 years, they start to rot. After 10 years, you have to replace them. Did you ever look at certain parts of California where they have heavy windmills and they've been abandoned and they're all different manufacturers and all different companies? And it is the ugliest thing. It looks like a graveyard almost, a graveyard of windmills.
It's pollution.
It's so bad.
It's no different than leaving garbage on the ground.
How about in New Jersey, off the coast of New Jersey, they want to build. The people are going crazy not to build them, but we have them. The whales are washing up on shore.
Right.
So in 50 years, they had one whale come ashore. Now they had like 18 come in the last year.
What's happening with the whales? I've read about this.
Well, they say that the wind drives them crazy. You know, it's a vibration because you have those. You know, those things are 50-story buildings, some of them.
Right, and they're super sensitive to vibrations.
They have those. You know, the wind is rushing, the things are blowing, it's a vibration, and it makes noise. You know what it is? I want to be a whale psychiatrist. It drives the whales freaking crazy. And something happens with them. But for whatever reason, they're getting washed up on shore. And, you know, and yet the environment is
ignored by the
environment.
Sure.
I think there's nothing ugly. I see it in Scotland. I see it all over the world. You have this beautiful valley. It's been there for, you know, in civilization, thousands of years, but millions of years.
I'm just not sure where we're going with all
Would your plan be to replace that with nuclear? What would you do?
Well, nuclear is bad. I mean, I think there's a little danger in nuclear, but, you know, we had some really bad nuclear. They did one in Alabama. They did one in, I think, South Carolina. They do them wrong. They build these massive things. Then the environmentalists get in. I don't want to go into a long story because it's too long for the show. This show is too valuable to talk about concrete. They have hardened concrete. It's 12 concrete. It's harder than steel. It's incredible. You put up a wall and inspector comes along and goes, no, you're a quarter of an inch. The wall might be 8 feet wide. You're a quarter of an inch too short. I'm sorry, you got to rip that wall. You got to report continuously. You're 1/4 of an inch. I'm sorry, rip that. You can't rip it. This stuff you can't put a hammer through. You can't. It's incredible. Concrete technology is unbelievable. You know what's happened. You think of concrete.
So you think that's an example of
I
overregulation?
understand.
You have an inspector that comes along and he says, take down a $25 zillion wall. These things ended up costing $25 billion.
Because Joe Rogan interviewing
Here's the story.
Trump.
France
That's
is largely nuclear, and they build small little compact plants. And if they need more, they build the same thing and they hook it up because they get too big and too complex and too expensive.
People want to see Jake Paul and Mike Tyson.
They say it's absolutely. You know, my uncle
got
had
no business being in the ring with Mike Tyson.
Other members of my family.
But they hype it
he was a
up,
professor
and you
at MIT
want to watch
for I think 41 years. He was the longest. When I was in the White House, they had an MIT person and Harvard came down to meet me, and the MIT person said, "I have a book on your uncle, Dr. John." He was a longest-serving professor. He was a great genius, and he had he knew everything from math to chemistry to nuclear. He knew. And he said someday it's going to be the way to go, but the problem is it's so dangerous in terms of war. He said, Donald, someday, this was a long time, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump, he said, someday you'll have a little satchel at your side and you'll go into a building and you'll be able to blow up New York City. I said, Uncle John, that'll never happen. He's right. You know, he's right.
Well, that was part of the problem with giving nuclear power to other countries, right? Like that was the problem that happened with India and Pakistan. They got power and then they were
the biggest problem in the world today is not global warming, it's nuclear warming. And we have idiots that are negotiating for us. We have a guy that doesn't make it past 4 o'clock. And it's not because of age. You know, I know so many guys in their late 80s and they're better than us. I think they're smarter than you were 25 years ago. I've known him a long time. He's 89 years old. He's short. I mean, he's great. Biden gives people a bad name because that's not old. That's not an age. I think they say it because I'm 3 or 4 years younger. You know, I think that's what they say. They say his age. It's not his age.
He's had 2 major brain surgeries.
Given that there weren't any major,
he went right towards the camera and made some apology to Native Americans, and he said that's why he headed out west. Like he's off the reservation, so to speak, for lack of a better term.
You know, it's interesting because during the debate, I was looking over. It's strange things were happening.
Yeah, but he couldn't get together. Do you think they knew he couldn't get together? Do you think that they wanted? Is that why, like historically, that debate was earlier than they've been in the past? Right?
I think they wanted to. Well, there's a lot of theories. A lot of people said do the debate now, we'll get them out. Right. I think that made the debate.
Well, that is what happened.
So I think they also said do the debate now and get it over with.
Right.
I don't think anybody thought he was going to get it. The debate got him out, but I think it's very unfair. Look, you have a bad debate. His numbers went down, but I think she's not doing very well right now, and I think she looks.
Usually he doesn't.
Well, I get to that too because it's hard to know. Like the whole poll thing is very bizarre for most people because most people don't answer polls, so they read the polls.
Were you at a poll?
I think Rogan's doing a great job.
You know how polls are done.
Added to his credibility because
I really don't believe too much in it.
So, 2016 taught a lot of people about the ineffective.
I'd go to a place and I'd have 30, 40,000 people. Hillary goes there 500 people, and they tell me I'm going to lose. I say, why am I going to lose? I have 40,000 people. She had 200 people. But you know, they charge you a lot of money too. You know, they charge you $500,000 to do some stupid poll, and they interview like 251 people. I don't think they interview images. I don't want to get myself in too much trouble. I think they said they make a deal. They got $500,000. Trump's leading 51 to 49. And everybody says, "Oh, do you understand?" I don't think. I think a lot. Look, I'm a very common sense person. I think that they probably don't always poll. Some of them probably never poll. What's the difference between 49 to 51 and 47 and a half?
Well, it's also a tiny percentage of the population. I don't think it's representative of the overall population.
I don't know of one person in my whole life that ever got polled by a poll.
Exactly. That's my point. So
I don't want to do the rest of this.
Really well in the polls. So this week I happen to believe in a verse. I only believe in I like them this month. But no, I honestly believe that this is probably what I thought. I had a poll, Washington Post, ABC, in Hillary in Wisconsin. They had me down 17 points the day before the election.
Really
it was wrong because I had a rally. I had 29,000 people at a racetrack. It was like 0 degrees in Wisconsin. And they had me down 17 points. In other words, you had no chance. And I won. And I called up my pollster. Good guy. And I believe he's legitimate. And, you know, some of them are, some of them aren't. I said, tell me, why did they have me down so much? Nobody's going to believe them the next time. They said they don't care. When you're down 17 points, because they're going to say, I love Trump, but I'm not going to waste my time. It's cold out. I said, but why did they make it 4 or 5? He said, at 4 or 5, they're going to go on. At 17, they're not going to go. So think of it. I was in the Washington Post, ABC poll. I was down 17 points in Wisconsin, and I won. It's crooked stuff.
There's a lot of good stuff. I want to talk about that too, because one of the things that people talk about with you is the denial of the results. And I think J.D. Vance did a brilliant job the other day when he was being interviewed, and they asked him, did Trump lose the 2020 election? And he turned it around and said, was there legitimate election interference in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story on social media? And was that a concerted effort?
Well, they say it made a 10-point difference, and I lost by one tenth of a point. They say it was 22,000 votes. But look, it was much more than that, and I appreciate you saying that. And by the way, I think he was a great pick.
So it works.
You like JD?
I like him a lot. Yeah.
You're allowed to say that.
No, I do. I like him a lot. I think he's a brilliant guy, and I think his ability to talk like a normal human being. He did my friend Theo podcast, and he just did it.
How did he do it?
He just talks like a normal human being.
Is that why you called me to do it?
No.
He was a nice
I
guy.
shot you. I was like, you got to come in here. It's all about timing. It's all about the timing. Do you even have a scar on your
That's
ear?
me, though.
What was that?
So right over
The other people love it.
Zip right there.
You know where to go.
It healed up pretty fucking good, man. That's pretty good. Yeah, it's not like some of the wrestlers, some of the UFC fighters.
No, you didn't get
You can find this.
It was like a top shot.
Easily.
The point of the bullet was over there.
You don't need me
the
for
thing's taken
that.
off a little bit, but it makes me a tougher guy. You know, the fighters love their. You know, Bo Nichols.
Of that interview. And we'll leave it at that. Alaska Man in Jersey signing out.